A blind woman in white sits alone in the storm. She knows his name before he speaks. She sees what no one should see. She brings warmth to a broken home and enemies to the door. When Adrian Cole stops to help a stranger in the rain, he doesn't know she's running from an empire built on stolen mines and buried sins. He doesn't know his daughter will be taken. He doesn't know the woman he saved will be the only one who can save them both. This is their story, a collision of desperation, power, an impossible choice. If you're watching, hit that like button and drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this story travels. Now let's begin. The rain came down in sheets that night, the kind that turned roads into rivers and made windshield wipers useless. Adrian Cole gripped the steering wheel tighter than he needed to, squinting through the downpour as he made his way home from the construction site. His hands ached, 32 years old, and his knuckles already looked 40. That's what 12-hour days did. That's what raising a 7-year-old alone did. He was thinking about Emma when he saw her. At first, it was just a shape at the bus stop. Pale, still, wrong for the hour and the weather. Adrian's foot hovered over the gas pedal. "Keep driving," the smart part of his brain said. "You don't know this person. You've got Emma waiting at Mrs. Pacheco's. You've got work in 6 hours. Keep driving." But he didn't. He pulled over, hazard lights blinking into the storm, and rolled down the passenger window. Water immediately sprayed inside. "Hey!" he shouted over the rain. "You need a ride?" The woman didn't move. She sat on the bench with her hands folded in her lap, barefoot, wearing what looked like a white linen dress that clung to her like a second skin. Her hair was dark and soaked, plastered against her face. She wasn't shivering. That's what got him. How still she was, like the cold didn't touch her. Then she turned her head toward him. Her eyes were pale, almost colorless in the streetlight. They didn't quite focus on him. Didn't quite focus on anything. "Adrian Cole," she said. His blood went cold. "What did you say?" "Adrian Cole, that's your name." He should have driven off. He should have floored it and never looked back. Instead, he opened the door and stepped out into the rain, water soaking through his jacket in seconds. "How do you know my name?" She stood slowly, carefully, like someone testing the ground beneath them. "Because I needed to find you." "Lady, I don't know what kind of game this is. It's not a game." Her voice was calm, too calm. "And I'm not trying to scare you. But if I stay out here much longer, someone's going to find me. And if they find me, they'll hurt anyone I'm near." Adrian stared at her. Up close, he could see she was young, maybe 30, maybe younger. Pretty in a way that seemed expensive, even drenched and barefoot. Her dress had no pockets, no purse, no phone. Nothing. "Who's looking for you?" "People you don't want to meet." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I can give you right now." Adrian ran a hand over his face, water streaming down his neck. This was insane. He should call the cops. He should leave her here and let someone else deal with whatever mess she dragged herself into. But then she tilted her head slightly, and her expression softened. "You're thinking about your daughter," she said quietly. "Emma, you're worried about getting home to her." His chest tightened. "How the hell do you know that?" "I just do. I know it's not normal. I know this doesn't make sense. But I promise you, Adrian, I'm not here to hurt you or her. I just need help, just for tonight." The rain pounded against the pavement. Somewhere in the distance, a car horn blared. Adrian looked at her, this strange, blind woman who knew his name, who knew his daughter's name, who stood in the storm like she had nowhere else to go. "Get in the car," he said finally. She didn't hesitate. She moved toward the passenger door with surprising precision, her hand finding the handle on the first try. Adrian watched her slide into the seat, water pooling at her feet. He got back in, slammed the door, and sat there for a moment, gripping the wheel. "This is a bad idea," he muttered. "Probably," she agreed. "What's your name?" "Vivian Cross." Adrian pulled back onto the road. The name didn't mean anything to him, but the way she said it, like it carried weight, like it was a risk just to speak it, made his stomach twist. "You're going to tell me what's going on," he said. "Once we get to my place, you're going to explain all of this." "I will. And if I don't like what I hear, you're gone. Deal?" "Deal." They drove in silence after that. Adrian kept glancing at her out of the corner of his eye. She sat perfectly still, hands folded in her lap, head slightly tilted like she was listening to something he couldn't hear. Her eyes stayed unfocused, staring somewhere past the windshield. "How long have you been blind?" he asked. 3 years? Accident? Something like that. Another non-answer. Adrian clenched his jaw but didn't push. Not yet. The apartment was a 40-minute drive from the construction site, tucked into a neighborhood that had seen better days but wasn't quite falling apart. Adrian parked in front of a 3-story building with peeling paint and a busted light over the entrance. He killed the engine. "We're here?" Vivian nodded. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet." He led her inside, one hand hovering near her elbow, but not quite touching. She moved carefully, but confidently, her bare feet silent on the wet pavement. Upstairs, Adrian unlocked the door to his apartment, a cramped 2-bedroom with mismatched furniture and toys scattered across the floor. "Wait here," he said, leaving her by the door. He grabbed a towel from the bathroom and handed it to her. She took it without a word and began drying her hair. Adrian watched her for a moment, then pulled out his phone and called Mrs. Pacheco. "Hey, it's Adrian. Yeah, I know it's late. Is Emma okay?" "Good. Listen, something came up. Can she stay with you tonight? I'll explain tomorrow." "Thanks, I owe you." He hung up and turned back to Vivian. She'd finished with the towel and was standing near the couch, head tilted like she was mapping the room in her mind. "Your daughter's safe," she said. "Yeah, she's with a neighbor." "Good." Adrian folded his arms. "All right, start talking." Vivian sat down slowly, folding her hands in her lap again. For a long moment, she didn't say anything. Then she took a breath. "I'm the CEO of Cross Industries, or I was. Technically, I still am, but my father runs the company. He always has." Adrian frowned. "Cross Industries, that's a tech conglomerate. Medical devices, pharmaceuticals, AI development. We're worth about $8 billion. His stomach dropped. "You're telling me you're a billionaire CEO and you're sitting in my apartment soaking wet with no shoes? I'm telling you I ran away from people who want to lock me up and use me like a tool. And yes, I'm aware of how that sounds. It sounds insane." "It is insane." She paused. "My father isn't a good man, Adrian. He built that company on innovation, but also on things most people would call crimes, illegal research, human trials without consent, experiments that destroyed lives." Adrian's throat went dry. "And you?" "I was one of them." She said it so quietly, he almost didn't hear her. 3 years ago, my father's research team developed a neural interface technology. The goal was to enhance cognitive function, improve memory retention, that sort of thing. But the side effects were unpredictable. Some subjects lost motor function, some had seizures, some died. Jesus. I volunteered for the trial. I thought I was helping. I thought we were making something that could change the world. She laughed bitterly. I was an idiot. What happened? The procedure worked. Sort of. I lost my sight, but I gained something else. She hesitated. I can sense things. Memories. Emotions. Thoughts people bury. It's not mind reading, not exactly. It's more like I can feel the shape of what someone's hiding, the weight of it. Adrian stared at her. "That's how you knew my name?" "Yes." "And Emma?" "Yes." He sat down heavily on the coffee table across from her. "That's impossible." "I know." "People can't do that." "I know. So either you're lying or I'm telling the truth and the world is stranger than you thought." Vivian's expression didn't change. "I don't blame you for not believing me. Most people wouldn't." Adrian rubbed his face. His head was pounding. "Why did you run?" "Because my father realized what I could do. And once he realized it, I stopped being his daughter. I became an asset. He used me to vet business partners, expose corporate spies, dig up dirt on competitors. I was his secret weapon. And when I told him I wanted out, he made it very clear that wasn't an option." "So you left?" 3 days ago. I've been moving ever since, staying off cameras, avoiding places he'd expect me to go. But his people are good. They're trained, and they're close. Adrian's pulse quickened. "How close?" "Close enough that coming here was a risk." "Great." He stood up, pacing. "So you're telling me I just brought a target into my home. You're telling me people are hunting you, and now they know where I live." I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't help if someone kicks down my door. You're right. Vivian stood as well, her movements slow and deliberate. I shouldn't have come here. I'll leave. And go where? She didn't answer. Adrian exhaled sharply. He wanted to be angry. He should be angry. But looking at her standing there in his living room with no shoes and nowhere to go, all he felt was tired. You can stay tonight, he said finally. But tomorrow, you're gone. Understood? Understood. He showed her to Emma's room, his daughter's bed still unmade, stuffed animals piled in the corner. Vivian sat down on the edge of the mattress, running her fingers over the blanket. She's 7, Vivian said softly.
Yeah, you love her more than anything. Adrian's jaw tightened. Don't do that. Do what? Read me. Or whatever it is you do. I don't want you in my head. Vivian nodded slowly. I'm sorry. I'll try. He left her there and went to his own room, but he didn't sleep. He lay on his bed, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rain hammer against the window. This was a mistake. He knew it was a mistake.
But he couldn't shake the image of her sitting at that bus stop, barefoot and still, waiting for someone who might never come. Morning came too fast. Adrian woke to pale light filtering through the blinds and the smell of coffee. He sat up, disoriented, and stumbled into the kitchen. Vivian was standing by the counter, a mug in her hands. She'd changed. She was wearing one of his old shirts and a pair of sweatpants he must have left out. Her hair was dry now, falling loose around her shoulders. I made coffee, she said. I hope that's okay. Adrian blinked. How did you... I can still use my hands, Adrian. I just have to go slower. He poured himself a cup and sat down at the table. For a moment they didn't speak. You didn't sleep, Vivian said. No. Neither did I. Adrian took a sip of coffee. It was strong, exactly how he liked it. How'd you know? Lucky guess. He almost smiled. Almost. Listen, Vivian said, setting her mug down. I meant what I said. I'll leave. I don't want to put you or your daughter in danger. Where will you go? I'll figure it out. That's not a plan. It's the only one I have. Adrian stared at her. She looked smaller in the daylight, more fragile. But there was something in the way she held herself, straight-backed, chin up, that reminded him she wasn't helpless. She'd survived 3 days on her own, blind and hunted. That took strength. Stay, he heard himself say. Vivian's head turned sharply toward him. What? Stay, just for a few days, until you figure out your next move. Adrian, I can't. You don't have anywhere else to go, and if what you said is true, you need time, so stay. She was quiet for a long moment, then, softly, why? Adrian didn't have a good answer. Maybe it was because she reminded him of himself, someone backed into a corner with no way out. Maybe it was because he'd spent too many years alone, carrying everything by himself, and he was tired of it. Or maybe it was simpler than that. Because no one should have to run forever, he said. Vivian's hands tightened around her mug. For the first time since he'd met her, she looked like she might cry. Thank you, she whispered. Adrian nodded. Don't make me regret it. Emma came home that afternoon. Adrian picked her up from Mrs. Pacheco's, bracing himself for the questions he knew were coming. Daddy, who's the lady? Her name's Vivian. She's staying with us for a little while. Why? Because she needs help. Emma tilted her head, her dark eyes sharp. Is she sad? Yeah, kiddo, I think she is. Then we should be nice to her. Adrian smiled despite himself. Yeah, we should. When they got home, Vivian was sitting on the couch, hands folded in her lap. She turned her head toward the door as it opened. Emma, she said softly. Emma froze, staring at her. Then she walked over slowly, stopping a few feet away. Hi, Emma said. Hi. Are you blind? Emma, Adrian started, but Vivian held up a hand. It's okay. She smiled faintly. Yes, I am. Does it hurt? Not anymore. Emma considered this. Then she held out her hand. I'm Emma. What's your name? Vivian reached out carefully, her fingers finding Emma's small hand. Vivian, it's nice to meet you. Emma grinned. You're pretty. Vivian laughed, a real laugh, surprised and genuine. Thank you. Adrian watched them, something tight in his chest, loosening just a little. Maybe this wouldn't be a disaster after all. That night, after Emma was asleep, Adrian sat with Vivian on the couch. The TV was on, but neither of them was really watching. She's a good kid, Vivian said. Yeah, she is. You've done a good job with her. Adrian shrugged. I do what I can. That's more than a lot of people. They sat in silence for a while. Then Vivian spoke again, quieter this time. Adrian, I need you to know something. If my father's people find me here, they won't just take me. They'll ask questions. They'll dig into your life. And if they think you're hiding something, they'll make it hurt. I'm not hiding anything. It won't matter. Adrian looked at her. Then we'll deal with it. You don't understand. I understand that you're scared. I understand that you're running, but I also understand that you're not a bad person, Vivian, and I'm not going to throw you out just because things might get hard. Her jaw trembled. You're an idiot. Yeah, probably. She shook her head, but she was almost smiling. Thank you. Stop thanking me. I can't help it. Adrian stood, stretching. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be long. Adrian? He turned back. If anything happens, Vivian said, her voice barely above a whisper, if they come here, you take Emma and you run. You don't wait. You don't fight. You just go. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. They both knew he wouldn't. The first sign of trouble came 2 days later. Adrian was walking Emma home from school when he noticed the car, a black sedan with tinted windows, parked across the street from his building. It hadn't been there that morning. Daddy, what's wrong? Emma asked. Nothing, kiddo. Come on. He hurried her inside, locking the door behind them. Vivian was in the kitchen, washing dishes. She turned her head as they entered. What happened? There's a car outside, Adrian said quietly. Black sedan, tinted windows. Vivian's hand stilled in the sink. How long has it been there? I don't know. It wasn't there this morning. It's them. Adrian's pulse spiked. You sure? Yes. He looked at Emma, who was watching them both with wide, worried eyes. Emma, go to your room and pack a bag. Just some clothes and your favorite stuffed animal, okay? Are we leaving? Maybe. Just do it, please. She nodded and ran down the hall. Adrian turned to Vivian. What do we do? We wait, Vivian said. They won't move during the day. Too many witnesses. But tonight they'll come. Yes. Adrian swore under his breath. All right. Then we leave before they get the chance. Adrian, we're leaving. All three of us. I'm not letting them take you, and I'm not letting them near my daughter. Vivian opened her mouth, then closed it. Finally, she nodded. Okay. They packed quickly, quietly. Adrian grabbed clothes, cash, his old service pistol from the closet, a relic from his brief stint in the army that he'd hoped never to touch again. Emma watched from the doorway, her backpack clutched in both hands. Daddy, I'm scared. I know, kiddo, but we're going to be okay. I promise. He didn't know if he believed it, but he said it anyway. They waited until dark. The sedan was still there, unmoving. We go out the back, Adrian said, through the alley. My truck's parked 2 blocks over. Vivian nodded. Lead the way. They moved through the apartment silently, Adrian carrying Emma in one arm and their bags in the other. Vivian followed close behind, one hand on his shoulder. The back door opened into a narrow alley lit by a single flickering streetlight. Adrian scanned the shadows, his grip tightening on the pistol tucked into his waistband. Nothing. Let's go. They moved quickly, keeping to the walls. Emma buried her face in Adrian's shoulder, her small body trembling. They were halfway to the truck when the footsteps started behind them. Adrian froze. Run, Vivian whispered. I'm not. Run! He ran. The alley opened onto the street, and Adrian sprinted toward his truck, Emma clinging to him. Vivian was right behind, moving faster than he'd thought possible. He threw open the door, shoved Emma inside, and turned to help Vivian. The man appeared out of nowhere, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in black. He grabbed Vivian by the arm, yanking her backward. She didn't scream. She twisted, sharp and precise, and drove her elbow into his throat. The man choked, stumbling back. Get in! Adrian shouted. Vivian dove into the truck. Adrian slammed the door, jumped into the driver's seat, and floored it. In the rearview mirror, he saw two more men appear in the alley, watching them go.
They know, Vivian said, breathless. They know where we are. Adrian's knuckles were white on the wheel. Then we don't stop. Emma was crying in the back seat. Vivian reached back, finding her hand. It's okay, Vivian said softly. It's okay. We're safe now. But Adrian knew they weren't. Not even close.
They drove for 3 hours straight, switching highways twice and doubling back through side roads Adrian barely remembered from years ago. Emma had finally stopped crying and fallen asleep in the back seat, her face pressed against the window. Vivian sat rigid in the passenger seat, her hands gripping the edge of the dashboard like she was bracing for impact.
Where are we going? She asked quietly.
Choi, I don't know yet. Adrian's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror for the 100th time. No headlights, no black sedans, nothing. But that didn't mean they were safe. We can't just drive forever. I know. Adrian, I said I know. He didn't mean to snap, but exhaustion was eating through him. His hands ached from gripping the wheel, his head pounded. I'm thinking. Vivian went quiet. After a moment, she turned her face toward the window, her pale eyes reflecting nothing but darkness. Adrian exhaled slowly, forcing himself to think. They needed somewhere off the grid, somewhere his name wouldn't show up on a motel registry or a credit card statement, somewhere Vivian's father's people wouldn't think to look. Then it hit him. I know a place, he said. Vivian turned back toward him. Where? My buddy from the service, Marcus. He's got a cabin about 2 hours north of here, way out in the woods. He barely uses it anymore. If I call him, he'll let us stay.
Are you sure we can trust him? Adrian thought about Marcus. 6 years in the army together, 3 deployments, more close calls than either of them liked to count. Marcus had pulled him out of a burning Humvee in Kandahar. Adrian had carried him half a mile with a shattered leg outside Mosul. Trust wasn't even a question. Yeah, Adrian said. I'm sure.
He pulled over at a gas station just off the highway, the kind of place that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 80s. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow. Adrian left the engine running and stepped out into the cold night air. He dialed Marcus's number. It rang 4 times before a gruff voice answered. This better be good, Cole. It's 2 a.m. Marcus, I need a favor. There was a pause. Then Marcus's tone shifted. What kind of favor? The kind where I don't ask questions and you don't either. I need your cabin, just for a few days. You in trouble? Not the kind you're thinking. Another pause. Adrian could hear the gears turning in Marcus's head, weighing the risk, calculating what it meant when someone you trusted called in the middle of the night asking for a safe place to hide. Keys are in the same spot, Marcus said finally, under the loose stone by the back steps. You remember where it is? Yeah. There's firewood in the shed and canned food in the pantry. Should be enough to last you a week if you're careful. Thanks, man. I owe you. You sure as hell do. And Cole? Yeah? Be careful. Whatever you're running from, don't let it catch you. Adrian hung up and got back in the truck. Vivian was stroking Emma's hair, her touch light and careful. We're good, Adrian said. He'll let us use the cabin. Thank you, Vivian whispered. Stop saying that. I can't. Adrian pulled back onto the highway, heading north. The road stretched out ahead of them, empty and dark. For a while, the only sound was the hum of the engine and Emma's soft breathing. Then Vivian spoke. They'll keep looking, you know. My father doesn't stop until he gets what he wants. Then we'll stay ahead of him. For how long? Adrian didn't have an answer to that. They reached the cabin just before dawn. It was tucked into a clearing surrounded by pine trees, small and weathered but solid. The kind of place you could disappear into and never be found if you didn't want to be. Adrian killed the engine and sat there for a moment, staring at the cabin. Emma stirred in the back seat, rubbing her eyes. Daddy, where are we? Somewhere safe, kiddo, come on. He carried her inside while Vivian followed, one hand trailing along the truck's side to keep her bearings. The cabin smelled like wood smoke and dust, but it was clean enough. One main room with a fireplace, a small kitchen in the corner, and 2 bedrooms off to the side. Adrian set Emma down on the couch and handed her a blanket. Get some sleep, okay? Okay. She yawned, already drifting off again. Vivian stood near the door, her arms wrapped around herself. She looks smaller here, more vulnerable. You should sleep too, Adrian said. I can't. Why not? Because every time I close my eyes, I see them, my father's people. I see what they'll do if they find me. Adrian walked over to her, stopping a few feet away. They're not going to find you, not here. You don't know that. Maybe not. But I know I'm not letting them take you without a fight. Vivian's jaw trembled. For a moment, she looked like she might cry again. Then she took a breath and straightened her shoulders. Why are you doing this? She asked. You don't even know me. I know enough. That's not an answer. Adrian rubbed the back of his neck. My wife died 4 years ago. Cancer. She was 31. We had Emma. We had plans. We had everything ahead of us. And then one day she didn't. And I spent a long time after that feeling like I should have done more. Should have fought harder. Should have found a way to fix it. He paused, the words catching in his throat. I couldn't save her, he said quietly. But maybe I can save you. Vivian didn't say anything. She just reached out, her hand finding his arm, her fingers curling gently around his sleeve. Thank you, she whispered. This time Adrian didn't tell her to stop. They spent the next few days settling into a fragile routine. Adrian chopped firewood and made supply runs to a small town 20 miles away, paying cash and keeping his head down. Vivian helped where she could, cooking simple meals, folding laundry, listening to Emma chatter about school and her favorite cartoons. Emma took to Vivian like she'd known her forever, dragging her outside to feel the bark of different trees and describing clouds in elaborate detail. That one's a dragon, Emma said one afternoon, lying on her back in the grass beside Vivian. And that one's a castle, and that one's a really big dog. Vivian smiled. What kind of dog? I don't know, a fluffy one. That's the best kind. Adrian watched them from the porch, something warm and unfamiliar stirring in his chest. It had been a long time since Emma had laughed like that. A long time since he'd heard her sound so light. But the warmth didn't last. On the fourth night, Adrian woke to the sound of footsteps outside. He sat up, adrenaline spiking, and grabbed the pistol from the nightstand. The cabin was dark, silent. He moved to the window and peered out through the curtains. Nothing. Just trees and shadows. Then he saw it. A figure standing at the edge of the clearing, barely visible in the moonlight. Tall, still, watching. Adrian's blood ran cold. He moved quickly, crossing the room and shaking Vivian awake. She gasped, sitting up. What? Someone's outside, Adrian whispered. Stay here with Emma. Don't make a sound. Adrian, wait! He didn't wait. He slipped out the back door, pistol raised, moving low and fast through the trees. His heart hammered in his chest. The figure was still there, unmoving. Adrian circled around, coming up behind them. When he was close enough, he raised the gun. Don't move! The figure turned slowly. It was a man, maybe 40, dressed in dark clothes. His hands were empty, raised in a gesture of surrender. Easy, the man said. His voice was calm, almost bored. I'm not here to hurt you. Then what are you here for? To deliver a message. Adrian's finger tightened on the trigger. From who? William Cross, Vivian's father. Adrian's stomach twisted. How did you find us? Does it matter? The man tilted his head. You've done well, Mr. Cole. You've kept her safe this long. But this ends now. Mr. Cross is willing to make you an offer. I'm not interested. You haven't heard it yet. I don't need to. The man smiled faintly. $100,000. Cash. No questions asked. All you have to do is tell us where she is and walk away. Adrian stared at him. 100,000. That was more money than he'd seen in his entire life. Enough to pay off debts, get Emma into a better school, maybe even buy a house. No, he said. The man's smile faded. You're making a mistake. Probably, but it's my mistake to make. The man studied him for a long moment. Then he lowered his hands. Mr. Cross thought you might say that. So here's the other part of the message. If you don't cooperate, he'll make sure you lose everything. Your job, your apartment, your daughter. Adrian's vision went red. He stepped forward, pressing the gun to the man's chest. You threaten my daughter again, Adrian said, his voice low and dangerous. And I'll put a bullet in you right here. Understand? The man didn't flinch. Understood. Now get the hell off this property before I change my mind. The man turned and walked back into the trees without another word. Adrian stood there, shaking, until the sound of footsteps faded completely. When he got back inside, Vivian was standing in the main room, Emma clutched against her side. Her face was pale. "What did they say?" Vivian asked. "They offered me money to give you up." "And you said no." "Of course I said no." Vivian's hands tightened on Emma's shoulders. "Adrian, you should have taken it. You should have—" "I'm not selling you out, Vivian. Not for any amount of money. So drop it." She opened her mouth, then closed it. Finally, she nodded. "We need to leave," she said. "They know we're here. It's not safe anymore." "I know." They packed quickly, throwing clothes and supplies into bags. Emma was quiet, her eyes wide and frightened. Adrian knelt in front of her, taking her small hands in his. "Listen to me, kiddo. I need you to be brave, okay? We're going to move again, but I promise you, we're going to be okay. Do you trust me?" Emma nodded, her lip trembling. "I trust you, Daddy." "Good girl." They left the cabin before sunrise, driving south this time. Adrian didn't have a plan anymore, just the vague idea that they needed to keep moving, keep staying ahead. But Vivian was quiet in the passenger seat, her expression troubled. "What is it?" Adrian asked. "They're not going to stop," she said. "My father won't stop. Not until he has me back or I'm dead." "So what do you want to do?" Vivian turned toward him, her pale eyes steady. "I want to fight back." Adrian frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm tired of running. It means I have evidence, files, recordings, documents that could destroy my father and his entire company. I've been carrying them for months, waiting for the right time to use them. Maybe now is that time." "Vivian, if you go after him, he'll come after you with everything he's got." "He's already doing that." "Yeah, but if you make this public, if you expose him, there's no going back. You'll be a target forever." "I'm already a target." Her voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. "At least this way, I'll be a target who fought back." Adrian didn't know what to say to that. Part of him wanted to tell her it was too dangerous, that she should just disappear and never look back. But another part of him, the part that had spent 4 years watching his wife fade away without being able to do a damn thing about it, understood exactly why she wanted to fight. "All right," he said. "What do you need?" "A secure internet connection, a journalist I can trust, and time." Adrian thought for a moment. Then he pulled out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in years. "Who are you calling?" Vivian asked. "Someone who might be able to help." The phone rang twice before a woman's voice answered, sharp and suspicious. "Who is this?" "Rachel, it's Adrian, Adrian Cole." There was a pause. "Adrian? Jesus, I haven't heard from you in, 5 years? 6. Listen, I need a favor." "What kind of favor?" "The kind where you don't ask too many questions. I've got someone with me who needs to get a story out, a big one. Are you still doing investigative work?" Rachel hesitated. "Yeah, I am. What kind of story are we talking about?" "Corporate corruption, illegal experiments, billionaire cover-ups, the works." Another pause. Then Rachel's voice dropped. "All business now." "Where are you?" "About 2 hours outside the city. Can you meet us?" "Give me a location. I'll be there in 3 hours." Adrian rattled off the address of a diner he remembered from years ago. A place so off the beaten path that no one would think to look for them there. "Thanks, Rachel." "Don't thank me yet. If this is as big as you say, it's going to get ugly." "It already is." He hung up and glanced at Vivian. "We've got a meeting in 3 hours. You ready for this?" Vivian nodded slowly. "I have to be." They drove in silence after that, the weight of what was about to happen pressing down on all of them. Emma had fallen asleep again in the back seat, her face peaceful. Adrian wished he could give her that peace, safety, a life where she didn't have to be afraid. But right now, all he could give her was a promise to keep fighting. The diner was exactly as Adrian remembered it, old, worn, half-empty even at midday. They sat in a booth near the back, Emma coloring on a placemat, while Vivian sat stiff and tense beside her. Rachel arrived exactly on time. She was tall, sharp-featured, with graying hair tied back in a practical bun. Her eyes swept the diner once before landing on Adrian. "Cole?" she said, sliding into the booth across from him. "You look like hell." Good to see you too, Rachel. Rachel's gaze shifted to Vivian, then to Emma. Her expression softened slightly. Is this the person with the story? Yeah. Adrian nodded toward Vivian. Rachel Ortiz, meet Vivian Cross. Rachel's eyebrows shot up. Cross? As in Cross Industries? That's right, Vivian said quietly. Rachel leaned back, studying her. All right, I'm listening. Vivian took a breath, and then she told her everything. The experiments, the neural interface, the things her father had done to her and dozens of others, the cover-ups, the bribes, the bodies buried under layers of corporate secrecy. Rachel listened without interrupting, her expression unreadable. When Vivian finished, Rachel was quiet for a long moment. Do you have proof? Rachel asked finally. Yes. Encrypted files, audio recordings, internal memos, everything you'd need to verify the story. And you're willing to go on the record? Vivian hesitated, then she nodded. Yes. Rachel exhaled slowly. This is going to blow up your life. You know that, right? Once this goes public, there's no going back. Your father will come after you with everything he's got. The company will try to destroy your credibility. You'll be dragged through the mud. I know, Vivian said, but I can't keep hiding, and I can't let him keep hurting people. Rachel looked at Adrian. What's your role in all this? I'm just trying to keep her alive. And the kid? She's mine, and she's off limits. Rachel nodded slowly. All right, I'll take the story, but I need those files tonight, and I need you both somewhere safe while I start making calls. Where? Adrian asked. I've got a safe house downtown. It's not fancy, but it's secure. I use it for sources who need protection. Vivian reached across the table, her hand finding Rachel's. Thank you. Rachel squeezed her hand briefly. Don't thank me yet. This is just the beginning. They followed Rachel's car through the city, weaving through traffic until they reached an older neighborhood with narrow streets and brick buildings. The safe house was on the third floor of a walk-up, small but clean. There's food in the fridge and clean sheets in the bedroom, Rachel said, handing Adrian a key. Don't answer the door for anyone but me, and don't leave unless it's an emergency. Got it. Rachel turned to Vivian. I need those files now. Can you access them? Vivian pulled a small USB drive from her pocket. Everything's on here, encrypted. The password is in a text file on the drive. Rachel took it carefully, like it was something fragile. I'll start reaching out to sources tonight. This is going to take a few days to verify, maybe longer. You need to be patient. I can do that. Rachel nodded and left without another word. Adrian locked the door behind her and turned to find Emma tugging on Vivian's hand. Can we have dinner now? Emma asked. I'm hungry. Vivian smiled faintly. Of course. They ate together at the small kitchen table, pasta from a box, garlic bread from the freezer, nothing fancy but warm and filling. Emma talked non-stop about the things she'd seen on the drive, the buildings and the people and the way the city lights looked like stars. Vivian listened, nodding and smiling, but Adrian could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands trembled slightly when she reached for her glass. After Emma went to bed, Adrian and Vivian sat on the couch in the dim light of a single lamp. You okay? Adrian asked. No. Vivian's voice was barely a whisper. But I will be. You did the right thing, giving Rachel those files. I hope so. You don't sound convinced. Vivian turned toward him, her pale eyes searching for something she couldn't see. What if it's not enough? What if my father finds a way to bury this, to make it all disappear? Then we'll deal with it. But you can't think like that. You took the first step. That's what matters. Vivian was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached out, her hand finding his. I don't know how to thank you, she said softly, for everything you've done. For Emma. For this. Adrian looked down at their joined hands. Her fingers were cold, trembling slightly. You don't have to thank me, he said. I'm just doing what anyone would do. No. You're doing what almost no one would do, and I won't forget that. Adrian didn't know what to say to that, so he just sat there holding her hand until she finally let go and stood. I should sleep, she said. Tomorrow's going to be hard. Yeah, it is. She paused at the bedroom door, her hand on the frame. Adrian? Yeah? If something happens to me, if my father's people find us before Rachel can publish the story, promise me you'll take Emma and run. Promise me you won't try to be a hero. Adrian's jaw tightened. I'm not making that promise. Adrian, I'm not leaving you behind, Vivian, so drop it. She stood there for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay. She disappeared into the bedroom. Adrian sat alone in the dark, staring at the locked door, wondering how the hell he'd ended up here, hiding in a safe house with a blind CEO and his daughter, waiting for the other shoe to drop. But even as the fear gnawed at him, even as the exhaustion pulled at his bones, he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't giving up. Not on Vivian, not on Emma, not on any of this. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. The next morning came with the kind of gray sky that promised rain but never delivered. Adrian woke to the sound of Emma's laughter drifting from the kitchen. For a moment, still caught between sleep and waking, he let himself believe everything was normal. That they were home, that Vivian was just a friend visiting, that no one was hunting them. Then reality crashed back in. He rolled off the couch, his back aching from the makeshift bed, and found Emma and Vivian at the stove. Emma was standing on a chair, carefully stirring something in a pan while Vivian stood beside her, one hand resting lightly on the counter for balance. "We're making pancakes," Emma announced proudly. "I can see that." Adrian rubbed his face, trying to shake off the exhaustion. "How'd you manage this without burning the place down?" "Vivian taught me," Emma said. "She said, you just have to listen to the bubbles." Adrian glanced at Vivian. She was smiling, but it didn't reach her eyes. He could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her free hand kept clenching and unclenching at her side. "You sleep at all?" he asked quietly. "A little?" "That's a lie." "Maybe." She turned her face toward him. "But neither did you." He couldn't argue with that. He'd spent most of the night staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in his head. The man at the cabin. The offer. The threat. William Cross knew where they'd been, which meant he could find them again. Adrian's phone buzzed on the counter. He grabbed it, expecting another burner text from Marcus, or maybe Rachel with an update. Instead, it was a number he didn't recognize. The message was short. "You have something that belongs to me. Let's talk. Alone." Adrian's blood went cold. He deleted the message immediately and pocketed the phone. "What is it?" Vivian asked. "Nothing. Wrong number." She didn't believe him. He could tell by the way her mouth tightened, but she didn't push. Not in front of Emma. They ate breakfast in relative silence, Emma filling the gaps with chatter about a cartoon she wanted to watch later. Adrian forced himself to eat, even though the food tasted like cardboard. His mind was racing. William Cross had his number. That meant he had more than just their location history. He had access to things Adrian hadn't even considered. After breakfast, Emma settled on the floor with her coloring books. Vivian sat on the couch, her hands folded in her lap, waiting. Adrian pulled her into the small bedroom and closed the door. "He texted me," Adrian said quietly. Vivian's face went pale. "My father?" "Yeah, he wants to talk." "What did you say?" "Nothing. I deleted it. Adrian, he's trying to isolate you, get you alone so he can—" "I know what he's trying to do." Adrian kept his voice low, controlled. "But it doesn't matter. I'm not meeting him. I'm not playing his game. He won't stop. You know that, right? He'll keep pushing until he finds a crack. Then we don't give him one." Vivian shook her head slowly. "You don't understand what he's capable of. My father doesn't just threaten people. He destroys them. He'll dig into your life, find every mistake you've ever made, every person you've ever cared about, and he'll use it all against you. Let him try." "Adrian," I said, "let him try." His jaw was set, his eyes hard. "I've been through worse than some billionaire with a god complex. I survived Afghanistan. I survived losing my wife. I'll survive this too." Vivian reached out, her hand finding his arm. "I don't want you to just survive. I want you and Emma to be safe. And the longer you stay with me, the less safe you are." "Too late for that now." "It's not. You could still walk away. Take Emma and disappear. Change your names, start over somewhere new. My father would have no reason to come after you if I'm not there." Adrian stared at her. "You really think I'd do that? Just leave you here alone?" "I think you should consider it." "Well, I'm not, so drop it." Vivian's fingers tightened on his arm. For a moment, she looked like she might argue. Then she just nodded, her expression resigned. "Okay, They returned to the living room. Emma looked up from her coloring book, her eyes darting between them. "Are you guys fighting?" she asked. "No, kiddo," Adrian said. "Just talking." "About the bad people?" Adrian's chest tightened. "Yeah, about the bad people." Emma set down her crayon. "I don't want them to hurt Vivian." "They won't." "How do you know?" "Because I won't let them." Emma studied him for a long moment, then nodded, like that settled it. Adrian wished he had her faith. Rachel showed up just after noon carrying a laptop bag and looking like she hadn't slept either. She set the bag on the kitchen table and pulled out her computer. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. Adrian sent Emma to the bedroom with instructions to play quietly. Once the door was closed, he and Vivian sat across from Rachel. "I've been going through the files," Rachel said, "and I have to say this is worse than I thought." "How bad?" Vivian asked. "Bad enough that I've already had 2 lawyers tell me to bury it, and 3 sources refuse to go on the record." Rachel opened the laptop and turned it toward them. "Your father didn't just run illegal experiments. He built an entire infrastructure around them. Shell companies, offshore accounts, falsified research data. He's been doing this for at least 15 years. Vivian's hands clenched in her lap. "How many people?" "At least 60 that I can confirm. Probably more. Some of them died. Some of them are still alive but too scared to talk. And some of them," Rachel hesitated. "Some of them just disappeared." The room went silent. "What about the authorities?" Adrian asked. "Can't you take this to the FBI or something?" "I could. But your father's got connections, Vivian. High-level ones. Senators, judges, agency directors. If I go to the wrong person, this whole thing gets buried and you end up in a cell somewhere." "So what do we do?" Adrian asked. "We go public. I've got a contact at the Times who's willing to run the story if I can get a second source to corroborate. Someone who was directly involved in the experiments." "I was directly involved," Vivian said. "I know, but you're also the whistleblower. We need someone else. Someone your father can't dismiss as a disgruntled daughter." "There's no one," Vivian said flatly. "Everyone who worked on the project either disappeared or signed ND, as that would ruin them if they talked." Rachel leaned back in her chair. "Then we have a problem." Adrian's phone buzzed again. Another text from the same number. "I know you're with Rachel Ortiz. Tell her to drop the story, or I'll make sure she never works again." Adrian's stomach dropped. He held up the phone so Rachel could see. Rachel read the message and laughed. A short, bitter sound. "Well, that's confirmation he's worried." "He's threatening you," Adrian said. "He's been threatening me for years. Comes with the job." Rachel closed the laptop. "But it means we're close. He wouldn't be this aggressive if he thought he could contain this. Or he's about to do something we won't see coming," Vivian said quietly. Rachel looked at her. "You know him better than anyone. What do you think he'll do next?" Vivian was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "He'll take Emma." Adrian's blood turned to ice. "What?" "It's what he does. When he can't control someone directly, he finds leverage. And your daughter is leverage. He's not getting anywhere near her. He doesn't have to. He has people who will do it for him." Vivian turned toward Rachel. "How fast can you publish the story?" "If I skip some of the verification steps, 2 days. Maybe less." "Do it." "Vivian, if I rush this and get something wrong, your father's lawyers will tear it apart. The whole thing falls apart." "Then don't get anything wrong." Vivian's voice was steel. "But don't wait either. Every hour we delay is another hour he has to move against us." Rachel studied her, then nodded slowly. "All right, I'll push it through. But you need to stay here and stay quiet. No phones, no internet, no contact with anyone outside this room. Understood?" "Understood," Adrian said. Rachel packed up her laptop and stood. "I'll be back tomorrow with an update. Until then, keep your heads down." She left, locking the door behind her. Adrian immediately went to the bedroom and checked on Emma. She was lying on the bed, flipping through a picture book, safe and oblivious. He closed the door and turned to find Vivian standing in the hallway, her face drawn. "I'm sorry," she said. "For what?" "For bringing this into your life, for putting Emma in danger, for all of it." Adrian crossed the space between them. Stop apologizing. You didn't choose this. Your father did.
I chose to run. I chose to drag you into it. And I chose to help you. So we're both responsible. Now stop beating yourself up and help me figure out how to keep my daughter safe. Vivian nodded slowly. We need a backup plan, in case they come before the story publishes. What kind of backup plan? The kind where we don't wait for them to make the first move. Adrian frowned. What are you saying? I'm saying we go to them. We set a meeting with my father on our terms in a public place with enough witnesses that he can't try anything. That's insane. Maybe, but it's also the last thing he'd expect. Adrian ran a hand through his hair. And what happens at this meeting? You just walk up to him and say hi? No. I tell him I'm willing to come back, that I'll cooperate if he leaves you and Emma alone. You're not going back to him. I won't actually go back, but he doesn't know that. And while he's focused on me, you get Emma somewhere safe. Adrian shook his head. That's not a plan. That's suicide. It's the only way to guarantee Emma's safety. No, we're not splitting up. We stick together, and we wait for Rachel to publish the story. Once it's out, your father can't touch you. And if it takes too long, if he moves first? Adrian didn't have an answer to that. They spent the rest of the day in tense silence, waiting for something to happen. Emma sensed the mood and stayed quiet, playing with her toys and occasionally asking questions that Adrian answered with half-truths and forced smiles. Night fell. Adrian made dinner, spaghetti from a box, nothing fancy. They ate together at the small table, the silence broken only by the scrape of forks on plates. After Emma went to bed, Adrian and Vivian sat on the couch in the dark. The only light came from the street lamp outside, casting long shadows across the room. Tell me about your wife, Vivian said suddenly. Adrian glanced at her. Why? Because I want to know. Because you've told me so little about yourself, and I feel like I owe you more than just my secrets. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he started talking. Her name was Sarah. We met in college. She was studying nursing. I was doing construction management. She had this laugh, loud and unfiltered, the kind that made everyone around her start laughing too. She was tough. Tougher than me, honestly. When she got diagnosed, she didn't fall apart. She just looked at me and said, "We're going to fight this." And we did. For 2 years, we fought. He paused, his throat tight. But it wasn't enough. Near the end, she made me promise I'd take care of Emma, that I wouldn't let grief turn me into someone who couldn't be there for her. I've tried to keep that promise. Some days are harder than others. Vivian reached out, her hand finding his. She sounds like she was an amazing person. She was. Emma's lucky to have you. I don't know about that. I do. Vivian's fingers squeezed his gently. You're a good father, Adrian. A good man. Don't let anyone, including yourself, convince you otherwise. Adrian didn't know what to say to that, so he just sat there, holding her hand, feeling something shift between them, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Then his phone buzzed. Another text. Same number. Last chance. Meet me tomorrow at noon. Riverside Park, south entrance. Come alone or the girl pays the price. Adrian's vision blurred with rage. He stood abruptly, pacing the small room like a caged animal. What did he say? Vivian asked. Adrian showed her the phone. Her face went pale. You're not going. The hell I'm not. Adrian, it's a trap. I know it's a trap, but he's threatening Emma. I can't ignore that. So what are you going to do? Walk into his ambush and hope for the best? I'm going to meet him, and I'm going to make sure he understands that if he touches my daughter, I'll burn his entire world to the ground. Vivian stood, moving toward him with surprising speed. You can't fight him like this. He's too powerful. He has too many resources. Then I'll die trying. And what happens to Emma when you're dead? That stopped him cold. Vivian's hand found his chest, pressing lightly over his heart. You can't protect her if you're gone. So stop thinking like a soldier and start thinking like a father. Adrian's fists clenched at his sides. Then what do you suggest? We call Rachel. We tell her what's happening, and we move up the timeline. She said 2 days. Then we make it 1. Adrian pulled out his phone and dialed Rachel's number. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice sharp. What's wrong? He's threatening Emma. He wants to meet tomorrow. We're out of time.
Rachel swore under her breath. All right, I'll push the story live tonight. It won't be perfect, but it'll be enough. How long? Give me 4 hours, maybe 5. Can you hold out that long? Adrian glanced at Vivian, then at the closed bedroom door where Emma slept. Yeah, we can hold out. Good, stay put. And Cole? Yeah? Be ready. Once this goes live, all hell's gonna break loose. She hung up. Adrian set the phone down and turned to Vivian. 4 hours, he said. Then we wait. They sat together in the dark, listening to the sounds of the city outside. Every passing car made Adrian's hand drift toward the pistol on the coffee table. Every footstep in the hallway made his muscles tense, but nothing happened. The hours crawled by. Adrian checked on Emma twice, both times finding her asleep, her face peaceful. He envied her that peace, the ability to trust that the adults around her would keep her safe. At 3 a.m, Rachel called. It's live, she said. Front page of the Times website. Cross Industries CEO accused of illegal human experimentation. It's already trending. Adrian exhaled slowly. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This is just the beginning. Cross is going to come at us with everything he's got. Lawyers, PR firms, maybe worse. You need to be ready. We will be. And Cole? Get some sleep. You sound like death. She hung up. Adrian turned to Vivian, who was sitting perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap. It's done, he said. Vivian nodded slowly. Then there's no going back. No, there's not. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Vivian stood and crossed the room, her movements careful and deliberate. She stopped in front of him, close enough that he could feel the warmth of her. Thank you, she said softly, for everything, for believing me, for protecting me, for giving me the courage to fight back. Adrian looked down at her, at the woman who'd walked into his life out of the rain and turned everything upside down. You didn't need me for that. You were always going to fight. I just helped you get there. Vivian smiled faintly. Then, without warning, she leaned forward and kissed him. It was brief, tentative, like she wasn't sure if she was allowed, but it was real. When she pulled back, her cheeks were flushed. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. Adrian kissed her back. Longer this time, deeper. His hands found her waist, pulling her close. For a moment, the fear and exhaustion and danger all faded away. There was just her. Just this. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. We should get some sleep, Vivian whispered. Yeah, we should. But neither of them moved. They just stood there, holding each other in the dark, knowing that when morning came, everything would change. And they were right. The pounding on the door started at dawn. Hard, insistent, the sound of authority that didn't ask permission. Open up! Federal agents! Adrian bolted upright, adrenaline spiking. Vivian was already on her feet, her face pale. Emma appeared in the bedroom doorway, rubbing her eyes. Daddy? Stay there, kiddo. Don't move. Adrian grabbed the pistol and moved to the door, peering through the peephole. 3 men in dark suits stood outside, badges raised. We're looking for Vivian Cross, one of them shouted. We have a warrant for her arrest. Adrian's stomach dropped. He turned to Vivian. Did you know about this? No, my father must have moved faster than we thought. The pounding came again, harder this time. Open the door or we break it down. Adrian looked at Emma, at Vivian, at the door that was about to splinter. His mind raced. They couldn't run. They couldn't fight. They were trapped. Then Vivian stepped forward, her chin up, her shoulders square. Let them in, she said. Vivian, let them in. It's over. No, it's not over. We can still... Adrian. She turned toward him, her pale eyes steady. I'm not letting them hurt you or Emma because of me. So please, open the door. Adrian's hand shook on the doorknob. Every instinct screamed at him to fight, to protect her, to find a way out. But he looked at Emma, terrified and small in the doorway, and he knew Vivian was right. He opened the door. The agents swarmed in immediately, one of them grabbing Vivian's arms and pulling them behind her back. She didn't resist. She just stood there, calm and still, as they cuffed her. Vivian Cross, you're under arrest for corporate espionage, theft of proprietary information, and violations of federal data protection laws. That's bullshit, Adrian said. She didn't steal anything. It was her company. Step back, sir. No, you're making a mistake. One of the agents moved toward him, hand on his holster. Step back or you're going down too. Adrian froze. He wanted to fight, wanted to grab Vivian and run. But Emma was watching, her eyes wide with terror. Vivian turned her head toward him. It's okay. Take care of Emma. And don't stop fighting. They led her out of the apartment. Adrian stood in the doorway, watching as they pushed her into the back of a black SUV and drove away. Emma ran to him, wrapping her arms around his legs. She was crying, her small body shaking. They took her, Emma sobbed. They took Vivian. Adrian knelt down, pulling her into his arms. I know, kiddo. I know. Are they going to hurt her? Adrian's jaw clenched. Not if I can help it. He carried Emma back inside and locked the door. His hands were shaking, his mind racing. This wasn't over. William Cross thought he'd won, thought he'd silenced his daughter and scared Adrian into submission. But he was wrong. Adrian pulled out his phone and called Rachel. They arrested her, he said when she answered. Federal agents. They said corporate espionage. Rachel swore. Cross must have called in favors. But they can't hold her long, not with the story out. Too much public attention. How long? 24 hours, maybe 48. Depends on how fast his lawyers move. That's too long. I know, but there's nothing we can do right now except wait. Like hell there isn't. Adrian hung up before Rachel could argue. He looked at Emma, still clinging to his side. Pack a bag, kiddo. We're leaving. Where are we going? Adrian's expression hardened. To get Vivian back. Emma's backpack sat by the door, stuffed with clothes and her favorite stuffed rabbit. She watched Adrian move through the apartment, his movements sharp and purposeful, nothing like the careful way he usually did things. He was loading the pistol, checking the magazine, his jaw set in a way that made her stomach hurt. Daddy, are we really going to get Vivian? Yes. How? Adrian didn't answer right away. He shoved the gun into his waistband and grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair. I'm working on that part. What if the bad people hurt us? He stopped, turning to look at her. Then he crossed the room and knelt down so they were eye to eye. Listen to me, Emma. I need you to be brave right now. Braver than you've ever been. Can you do that for me? She nodded, even though her hands were shaking. Good girl. He kissed her forehead. Now, let's go. But before they could reach the door, Adrian's phone rang. He almost didn't answer it. Then he saw the caller ID and his blood went cold. It was Vivian's number. He answered immediately. Vivian? Not quite. The voice on the other end was smooth, cultured, the kind of voice that had never been told no in its entire life. Mr. Cole, I presume. Adrian's grip tightened on the phone. William Cross. Very good. I'm calling from my daughter's phone because I wanted to make sure you'd pick up. We need to have a conversation, you and I. I've got nothing to say to you. That's unfortunate, because I have quite a bit to say to you. There was a pause, the sound of movement on the other end. Your little journalist friend published quite the story. Very dramatic, very damaging. My legal team is already working to discredit it, of course, but I'll admit it's causing me some inconvenience. Good, Cross chuckled. You have spirit. I can see why Vivian was drawn to you, but spirit won't help you now. My daughter is currently being held at a federal detention facility, facing charges that will put her away for a very long time, unless, of course, we can come to an arrangement. What kind of arrangement? Simple. You bring me the copies of those files, all of them, every backup, every piece of evidence, and I make the charges disappear. Vivian walks free. You and your daughter go back to your quiet little life, and we all forget this unfortunate incident ever happened. Adrian's laugh was bitter. You think I'm that stupid? The second I hand over those files, you'll kill all three of us. Don't be dramatic, Mr. Cole. I'm a businessman, not a monster. I have no interest in harming you or your daughter. You're collateral damage in a family dispute, nothing more. Give me what I want, and you're free to go. And if I don't, then I'll be forced to explore other options. Options that involve your daughter. Emma, isn't it? 7 years old, attends Lincoln Elementary, loves strawberry ice cream, and has a fear of thunderstorms. Lovely child. It would be a shame if something happened to her. Adrian's vision went red. His hand shook so hard he almost dropped the phone. You touch her, and I swear to every power that exists, I will find you and I will end you. Empty threats don't frighten me, Mr. Cole. I've been threatened by far more dangerous men than you. But I'll tell you what. Since I'm feeling generous, I'll give you 12 hours to think about my offer. After that, the window closes. Permanently. The line went dead. Adrian stood there staring at the phone, his entire body vibrating with rage. Emma was watching him, her eyes huge. What did he say? Adrian forced himself to take a breath, then another. He wants to make a deal. What kind of deal? The kind we're not taking. He grabbed Emma's hand and pulled her toward the door. But his mind was racing now, trying to piece together a plan from fragments and desperation. Cross had Vivian. Cross had resources, lawyers, federal agents in his pocket. What did Adrian have? A pistol, a truck, and a 7-year-old daughter he'd die to protect. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. Unless he changed the game entirely. He pulled out his phone again and called Marcus. Cole, man, it's 7 in the morning. This better be. I need another favor, a big one. Marcus was quiet for a moment. How big? Remember that guy you used to run with in Detroit? The one who did private security? Deacon? Yeah, I remember him. Why? I need his number, and I need it now. Adrian, what the hell is going on? I can't explain right now, but I need someone who knows how to get into places they're not supposed to be. Can you help me or not? Marcus swore under his breath. Yeah, I can help. Give me 5 minutes. Adrian hung up and looked down at Emma. Change of plans, kiddo. We're going to go see an old friend of mine first. Will he help us get Vivian? I hope so. Marcus called back 3 minutes later with a number and an address. Deacon's in the city, runs a security consulting firm now, but he still does side work for the right price. Tell him I sent you. And Cole? Yeah? Whatever you're planning, be careful. Deacon's good, but he's not a miracle worker. I'll take what I can get. Adrian drove across town with Emma strapped in the back seat, her small face pressed against the window. The address Marcus had given him led to a nondescript office building in a neighborhood that looked like it couldn't decide if it was going up or coming down. Adrian parked on the street and told Emma to stay in the truck. Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone but me. What if you don't come back? I'll come back. But what if... Emma, he turned to face her fully. I will always come back for you. Always. Understand? She nodded, her lip trembling. Adrian climbed out and headed into the building. The elevator was broken, so he took the stairs to the 3rd floor. The door at the end of the hallway had a small brass plate that read Deacon Security Solutions. Adrian knocked. The man who answered was tall and broad-shouldered, with graying hair and a scar that ran from his left ear to his chin. He looked Adrian up and down, his expression unreadable. You Marcus's friend? Yeah. Come in. The office was small and cluttered, filled with computer monitors and equipment Adrian didn't recognize. Deacon gestured to a chair and sat down behind his desk. Marcus said you need help with something sensitive. What's the job? Adrian leaned forward. I need to get someone out of a federal detention facility. Deacon raised an eyebrow. That's not sensitive. That's insane. I know, but I don't have a choice. There's always a choice, friend, and the smart choice here is to walk away and let the lawyers handle it. The person who put her there owns the lawyers. Deacon studied him for a long moment. This about that Cross Industries story? The one that broke last night? Yeah. So the woman you're trying to bust out is Vivian Cross? Yeah. Deacon leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. You know what you're asking me to do, right? We're talking about a federal facility, armed guards, surveillance, protocols. Even if we get her out, they'll hunt you for the rest of your life. I know. And you're still willing to do it. I don't have a choice. Her father's coming after my daughter. The only way to stop him is to get Vivian somewhere safe and make sure the truth comes out. Deacon was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed and pulled out a laptop. All right, let's see what we're dealing with. He typed rapidly, pulling up schematics and floor plans. Adrian watched, his heart pounding, as Deacon mapped out the detention facility where Vivian was being held. She's in the downtown federal building, temporary holding, probably on the 3rd floor. Security's tight, but not impossible. The real problem is getting out once we're in. They'll lock down the building the second an alarm goes off. So we make sure the alarm doesn't go off. That's easier said than done. Can it be done or not? Deacon looked at him. Yeah, it can be done. But it's going to cost you, and I'm not talking about money. What do you want? I want to know why you're doing this. And don't give me some line about doing the right thing. I've been in this business long enough to know nobody risks everything for a stranger unless there's more to the story. Adrian hesitated. Then he told him. About the rain and the bus stop. About Emma and the way Vivian had smiled when his daughter described clouds. About the kiss in the dark and the feeling that for the first time in 4 years, he wasn't carrying everything alone. When he finished, Deacon nodded slowly. All right, I'm in. Just like that? Just like that. But we do this my way. You follow my lead, you don't ask questions, and if things go sideways, you get your daughter and you run. Deal? Deal. Deacon stood and started gathering equipment. Radios, lockpicks, what looked like a small EMP device. We move tonight, 2 a.m. when the shift change happens. That gives us a 15-minute window to get in and out. You bring your truck around to the south entrance. I'll meet you there. What about Emma? She stays in the truck, doors locked, engine running. If we're not out in 20 minutes, she drives to this address. He scribbled something on a piece of paper. It's a safe house. Friend of mine runs it. She'll be taken care of. Adrian pocketed the paper, his chest tight. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We might all be dead by morning. Adrian left the office and returned to the truck. Emma was right where he'd left her, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Did he say yes? Yeah, kiddo, he said yes. So, we're really going to save Vivian? Adrian started the engine. We're really going to try. The rest of the day crawled by. Adrian drove them to a cheap motel on the outskirts of town, paying cash for a room with 2 beds and a broken TV. Emma curled up on one bed with her rabbit, while Adrian sat on the other, field stripping and cleaning the pistol. Daddy? Yeah? Are you scared? Adrian looked at her. Yeah, I am. Me too. He set the gun down and moved to sit beside her. You know what your mom used to tell me when I was scared? Emma shook her head. She said fear is just your brain's way of telling you something matters, and the things that scare you the most are usually the things worth fighting for. Is Vivian worth fighting for? Adrian thought about the woman who'd walked into his life out of nowhere, who'd brought danger and chaos and something he'd thought he'd lost forever. Yeah, she is. Emma nodded and snuggled closer. Then we'll fight. Yeah, kiddo, we will. They dozed fitfully through the afternoon. When evening came, Adrian ordered pizza, and they ate in silence, both of them too nervous to talk. Emma fell asleep around 9, her small body curled around the rabbit. Adrian sat in the chair by the window, watching the parking lot, waiting for 2 a.m. to arrive. When it finally did, he woke Emma gently. Time to go, kiddo. She rubbed her eyes and followed him to the truck without complaint. The drive to the federal building took 30 minutes. The streets were empty, the city asleep. Adrian parked in the shadows near the south entrance, just like Deacon had instructed. Deacon appeared out of the darkness 5 minutes later, dressed in black and carrying a duffel bag. He tapped on the window and Adrian rolled it down. You ready? As I'll ever be. Good. Stay here. If you hear gunshots, drive. Don't wait for me, don't look back, just go. What about Vivian? If there's gunshots, she's already dead, so drive. Adrian's stomach twisted, but he nodded. Deacon disappeared into the building. Adrian sat there, his hands gripping the wheel, counting the seconds. Beside him, Emma was silent, her eyes wide and frightened. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Then 15. Adrian's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. We're coming out. Be ready. Adrian started the engine, his heart hammering. 30 seconds later, the south entrance door burst open and Deacon emerged, half carrying Vivian. She was stumbling, disoriented, still in the white dress she'd been arrested in. Adrian threw open the passenger door. Deacon shoved Vivian inside and slammed the door. Go! Now! Adrian floored it. The tires screamed as they peeled out of the parking lot. In the rearview mirror, he saw lights flicking on inside the building, heard the faint sound of alarms. Vivian was slumped in the seat, breathing hard. Emma reached forward from the back, touching her shoulder. Vivian? Are you okay? Vivian turned her head, her pale eyes unfocused. Emma? We came to get you. Vivian's face crumpled. She reached back, finding Emma's hand and squeezing it. You shouldn't have. It's too dangerous. We couldn't leave you there, Adrian said, his eyes on the road. My father... Your father can go to hell. Adrian drove for 20 minutes, switching streets and doubling back until he was sure they weren't being followed. Then he pulled into an empty parking garage and killed the engine. They sat there in the dark, all of them breathing hard. "How did you do it?" Vivian asked finally. "Friend of a friend, don't ask questions." "Adrian, they're going to come after you now. They're going to—" "I know, but I'd rather have them coming after me than sitting around waiting for your father to hurt Emma." Vivian was quiet for a moment. Then she reached out, her hand finding his face. Her fingers traced his jaw, his cheekbone, like she was trying to memorize the shape of him. "You're an idiot," she whispered. "Yeah, I've been told." She leaned forward and kissed him. It was desperate and grateful and terrified all at once. When they broke apart, Emma made a small sound from the back seat. "Does this mean Vivian's going to stay with us forever?" Adrian glanced at Vivian. She was smiling through tears. "I hope so, kiddo," Adrian said. "I really hope so." But before anyone could say anything else, Adrian's phone rang. He didn't recognize the number, but something told him to answer. "Hello? Mr. Cole?" It was William Cross again, his voice cold and controlled. "I'm disappointed. I gave you 12 hours to make the right choice, and instead you chose to break my daughter out of federal custody. That was unwise." "Go to hell. I'm afraid it's too late for insults. You see, while you were busy playing hero, my people were busy as well. And I think you'll find I've been more productive than you have." Adrian's stomach dropped. "What did you do?" "Nothing yet, but I will if you don't listen very carefully to what I'm about to say." "I'm listening." "I know you're in a parking garage on 5th and Lombard. I know you have my daughter with you. And I know that right now you're thinking about running. Don't. My people have the building surrounded. You won't make it 3 blocks. Adrian's eyes darted to the rearview mirror. Nothing. But that didn't mean Cross was lying. "What do you want?" "I want you to bring Vivian to me. Tonight. There's a private facility 20 miles north of the city. I'll text you the address. Come alone, bring my daughter. And I promise you and Emma can walk away from this." "And if I don't?" "Then I'll have my people storm the garage. And in the confusion, accidents happen. Your daughter could get hurt. Vivian could get hurt. You could get hurt. I'd rather avoid that mess. Wouldn't you?" Adrian's hands were shaking. He looked at Vivian, at Emma, at the gun on the seat beside him. "You're a coward," Adrian said, "hiding behind threats and hired guns. You couldn't even face us yourself." "I don't need to face you, Mr. Cole. I just need you to do what you're told. You have 1 hour. The address is being sent to your phone now. Don't be late." The line went dead. Adrian stared at the phone. A second later, a text came through with an address and GPS coordinates. "What did he say?" Vivian asked, her voice tight. "He wants us to come to him. Says he's got the building surrounded." "Do you believe him?" Adrian looked around the garage. It was empty, silent. But that didn't mean anything. "I don't know, but I'm not willing to risk Emma to find out." "So what do we do?" Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he made a decision. "We go to him, but not the way he's expecting." "What do you mean?" Adrian pulled out his phone and called Rachel. She answered on the second ring, her voice groggy. "Cole, it's 3 a.m. This better be— I need you to do something for me, and I need you to do it now." "What?" "Get every journalist, every camera crew, every news outlet you can think of, and send them to this address." He rattled off the coordinates Cross had sent him. "Tell them Vivian Cross is going to be making a statement about her father's illegal experiments. Tell them to be there in 1 hour." Rachel was silent for a moment. "Are you insane? If you show up there, Cross will have you killed." "Not if there's 50 cameras watching him. That's a hell of a gamble. It's the only play we've got left." Rachel sighed. "All right, I'll make the calls, but Cole?" "Yeah? You better know what you're doing." "I don't, but I'm doing it anyway." He hung up and turned to Vivian. "You're going to face your father, in front of the whole world. Are you ready for that?" Vivian's jaw set. "I've been ready for 3 years." "Good, because this is it. After tonight, there's no going back." She nodded. "Then let's finish this." Adrian started the engine and pulled out of the garage. In the back seat, Emma was gripping her rabbit so hard her knuckles were white. "Daddy, I'm scared." "I know, kiddo, me too, but we're going to be okay." "I promise." He didn't know if he believed it, but he said it anyway. The drive took 40 minutes. The address Cross had given them led to a sprawling estate north of the city, surrounded by high walls and security gates. Adrian could see lights in the distance, the outline of a mansion against the night sky. But as they got closer, he also saw something else. News vans. Dozens of them, parked along the road leading to the estate. Satellite trucks with their antennas extended. Reporters setting up cameras and microphones. Rachel had delivered. Adrian pulled up to the gate. A security guard stepped out, hand on his holster. "This is private property. Turn around." "I'm Adrian Cole. William Cross is expecting me." The guard spoke into his radio, then nodded. "Go ahead. Park in front of the main house." The gates opened. Adrian drove through slowly, his eyes scanning the grounds. More security, more lights. This wasn't a meeting. It was a trap. But it was a trap with witnesses. He parked and turned to Vivian. "You ready?" She nodded. "Let's go." They climbed out of the truck. Adrian told Emma to stay inside and lock the doors. Then he and Vivian walked toward the mansion, toward whatever was waiting for them inside. The front door opened before they reached it. A man in an expensive suit stood in the doorway, his expression cold. "Mr. Cole, Miss Cross, please come in. My employer is waiting." They stepped inside. The house was massive, filled with art and marble and the kind of wealth that didn't need to announce itself. The man led them through a series of hallways to a large study. And there, sitting behind a mahogany desk, was William Cross. He looked exactly like Adrian had imagined. Mid-60s, silver hair, sharp eyes that missed nothing. He stood as they entered, his expression calm. "Vivian, it's been too long." "Not long enough," Vivian said. Cross smiled thinly. "Still so dramatic. And Mr. Cole, thank you for bringing her. I trust you'll accept my offer now and take your daughter home?" "No," Adrian said. "We're not here to make a deal." Cross's smile faded. "Then why are you here?" Vivian stepped forward. "Because I wanted to see your face when your world falls apart." Cross frowned. "What are you talking about?" Vivian turned toward the window. Outside, the news crews were setting up their equipment, their lights illuminating the grounds. "I'm talking about the 50 journalists outside right now, waiting to hear me tell the truth about what you've done. I'm talking about the fact that every word we say in this room is about to become public record. And I'm talking about the fact that you've finally run out of places to hide." Cross's face went pale. He moved to the window, staring at the cameras. "You brought them here." "I did." "You stupid girl. Do you have any idea what you've done?" "Yeah," Vivian said, her voice steady. "I've ended this, once and for all." Cross turned back to her, his expression twisted with rage. "You think this changes anything? You think a few reporters are going to stop me? I own half the judges in this state. I have connections you can't even imagine. By tomorrow, this will all be forgotten." "No," Vivian said. "It won't, because I'm not running anymore, and I'm not letting you control me anymore. So you can threaten me all you want. You can send your lawyers and your hired guns. But you can't make me disappear, not anymore." Cross stared at her. For a moment, he looked like he might hit her. Then he turned to Adrian. "This is your fault. You turned her against me." "I didn't turn her against you," Adrian said. "You did that yourself." Cross's hand moved toward his desk drawer. Adrian saw the motion and reacted instinctively, pulling the pistol from his waistband and leveling it at Cross's chest. "Don't." Cross froze. Then he laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "You're going to shoot me? In front of all those cameras?" "If I have to." "You won't, because you're not a killer, Mr. Cole. You're just a desperate man trying to protect what's his, and that makes you weak." Adrian's finger tightened on the trigger. For a moment he imagined pulling it, imagined ending this right here, right now. But then Vivian's hand touched his arm. "Adrian, don't. He's not worth it." Adrian stared at Cross for a long moment. Then he lowered the gun. "You're right. He's not." They turned and walked out of the study, leaving Cross standing alone. Outside, the cameras were rolling. Reporters shouted questions as they emerged. Vivian stopped at the top of the steps. The lights were blinding, but she didn't flinch. She stood there, straight-backed and steady, and began to speak. "My name is Vivian Cross, and I'm here to tell you what my father has done." Adrian stood beside her, his hand finding hers. And as she spoke, As she laid bare every crime, every cover-up, every life her father had destroyed, Adrian felt something shift. The fear that had been choking him for days finally loosened its grip. They'd done it. They'd fought back. And for the first time since this whole nightmare began, Adrian believed they might actually survive. The cameras kept rolling as Vivian spoke, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Adrian stayed beside her, close enough that his shoulder brushed hers, a silent reminder that she wasn't alone. Behind them, through the open door of the mansion, William Cross stood frozen in the study, his face visible through the window like a portrait of a man watching his kingdom burn. Vivian detailed everything. The neural experiments, the subjects who'd lost their minds or their lives, the falsified research data and the offshore accounts used to pay off witnesses, the shell companies and the senators who looked the other way. She named names, cited dates, and when a reporter asked if she had proof, she held up the USB drive that Rachel had copied before publishing the original story. "Everything is here," Vivian said, "and copies have been sent to every major news outlet and federal agency in the country. My father can't bury this anymore." A reporter from the front shouted, "Ms. Cross, are you saying your own father experimented on you?" Vivian's jaw tightened. "Yes. I volunteered because I believed in the research. I believed we were helping people. But the procedure took my sight and gave me something else, something my father saw as a weapon, not a tragedy. He used me to spy on his competitors, to manipulate business deals, to destroy anyone who threatened his empire. And when I tried to leave, he made it clear I was his property, not his daughter, his property." The crowd erupted with questions, but Vivian held up her hand. "I'm not taking questions tonight. I just wanted to make sure the truth was on record. Whatever happens next is in the hands of the people who are supposed to protect us from men like my father." She turned and walked back toward the truck, Adrian guiding her with a hand on her arm. The reporters surged forward, but security held them back. Adrian could hear them shouting, could see the camera flashes lighting up the night like lightning. When they reached the truck, Emma was pressed against the window, her face pale and frightened. Adrian opened the door and she threw herself into his arms. "Is it over, Daddy?" "Not yet, kiddo, but we're getting there." They climbed into the truck and Adrian drove away from the estate, leaving the chaos behind. In the rearview mirror, he could see more security vehicles arriving, could see William Cross emerging from the mansion surrounded by lawyers. But it didn't matter anymore. The story was out. The cameras had caught everything. There was no putting this back in the box. They drove in silence for a while. Vivian sat with her head against the window, her eyes closed, looking more exhausted than Adrian had ever seen her. Emma had fallen asleep in the back, her rabbit clutched to her chest. "You okay?" Adrian asked quietly. "I don't know," Vivian said. "I just burned down my entire life in front of 50 cameras. I have no idea if I'm okay." "You did the right thing." "Did I?" "Because right now it doesn't feel right. It feels like I just painted a target on all of us." "We already had a target. You just made sure your father couldn't hide behind his money anymore." Vivian was quiet for a moment. "What happens now?" "Now we find somewhere safe to sleep. And tomorrow we figure out the rest. There's going to be an investigation. Federal prosecutors, probably. They'll want me to testify." "Good. Let them investigate. Let them drag your father through every court in the country. You've done your part." "Adrian, you don't understand. My father's lawyers will come after me. They'll try to discredit everything I said, paint me as unstable or vengeful. They'll say I'm lying. Let them try. You've got evidence, you've got witnesses, and you've got the fact that you were willing to stand in front of the world and tell the truth while your father hid in his mansion." Vivian turned her head toward him. Even in the dark, even without being able to see him clearly, Adrian felt the weight of her gaze. "Why do you have so much faith in me?" she asked. "Because you keep proving me right." She reached across the seat, her hand finding his. They drove like that for a while, hands linked, the city lights fading behind them. Adrian took them to Marcus's cabin, the same one they'd fled from days earlier. It felt like years. The cabin was dark and cold when they arrived, but Adrian got a fire going while Vivian helped Emma into bed. By the time the flames were crackling in the fireplace, Emma was asleep again, her small body curled under the blankets. Adrian and Vivian sat on the couch, both of them too wired to sleep despite the exhaustion pulling at their bones. The fire cast shadows across the room, making everything feel softer, safer than it was. "Do you think he'll come after us?" Vivian asked. Your father? Adrian considered it. No, not tonight. He's too busy trying to control the narrative. But eventually, yeah, he'll come after us. Men like him always do. So what do? We fight. Same as we've been doing. Same as we'll keep doing until he can't fight anymore. Vivian leaned her head against his shoulder. I'm tired of fighting. I know. I just want to sleep. I want to wake up and have this all be over. It will be. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week, but eventually it'll be over. And when it is, you'll still be here. You'll still be alive, and that's what matters. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Thank you. For everything. For not giving up on me when you should have. For risking everything to help someone you barely knew. I don't know how to repay that. You don't have to repay anything. Yes, I do. Because what you did, breaking me out of that facility, standing beside me in front of those cameras, you didn't have to do any of that. You could have walked away a dozen times, but you didn't. Why? Adrian stared into the fire, watching the flames dance. You remember what you said to me that first night, in the apartment? I said a lot of things. You said no one should have to run forever. And I think the same is true about carrying things alone. I spent 4 years doing that after Sarah died. Carrying all of it by myself because I thought that's what being strong meant. But it just made me tired. And then you showed up, and suddenly I wasn't carrying it alone anymore. So maybe I didn't do this just for you. Maybe I did it for me too. Vivian lifted her head, her hand reaching up to touch his face. I think I'm falling in love with you, Adrian Cole. And that terrifies me. Adrian's breath caught. Why does it terrify you? Because everyone I've ever loved has either left or been taken from me. And I don't think I could survive losing you too. You're not going to lose me. You don't know that. No, I don't. But I'm choosing to believe it anyway. Because the alternative is giving up. And I'm done giving up. He leaned down and kissed her. It was slow and careful. Nothing like the desperate kisses they'd shared before. This one felt like a promise. Like a choice they were both making, knowing full well the cost. When they finally pulled apart, Vivian was crying silently, tears streaming down her face. I don't deserve you, she whispered. Yeah, you do. Stop saying you don't. They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other in the firelight, both of them too afraid to let go. The next 3 days passed in a blur. The story exploded across every news outlet in the country. Cross Industries' stock plummeted. Federal prosecutors announced a formal investigation. 3 senators who'd received campaign donations from William Cross suddenly found themselves under scrutiny. And through it all, Adrian, Vivian, and Emma stayed hidden in the cabin, waiting for the storm to pass. Rachel visited on this 4th day, bringing supplies and updates. She sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, looking more exhausted than Adrian had ever seen her. It's working, she said. Cross's lawyers are scrambling, but they can't contain this. Too many people saw that press conference. Too many outlets picked up the story. He's done. What about the federal case? Adrian asked. Adrian, they're building it, slowly. They want to make sure it's airtight before they move, but they've already seized documents from Cross Industries headquarters. They've interviewed a dozen former employees. It's happening. How long? Months, probably. Maybe a year before it goes to trial. But it'll go to trial. I'm sure of it. Vivian was sitting by the window, her hands folded in her lap. What about the charges against me? The corporate espionage? Rachel smiled faintly. Dropped. Turns out the arresting agents didn't have proper authorization. Their warrant was signed by a judge who's currently under investigation for accepting bribes from, surprise, William Cross. The whole arrest was illegal. You're free. Vivian's shoulders sagged with relief. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank your stubborn friend here. If he hadn't broken you out when he did, you'd still be sitting in a cell while your father's lawyers buried you. Adrian shrugged. Just did what needed doing. Rachel stood, draining her coffee. I should get going, but before I do, I need to warn you. There are reporters camped outside my office trying to find out where you are, and Cross's people are still looking for you. You're not safe here. Where should we go? Adrian asked. I don't know, but wherever it is, make it somewhere they won't think to look. After Rachel left, Adrian sat down with Vivian and Emma to figure out their next move. Emma wanted to go to the beach. Vivian suggested Canada. Adrian just wanted somewhere quiet where no one knew their names. In the end, they decided on a small town in Montana that Marcus had mentioned once. Population 800, no major highways. The kind of place where people minded their own business. They packed up the cabin and hit the road the next morning. The drive took 3 days. They stopped at cheap motels and roadside diners, paying cash and keeping their heads down. Emma turned it into an adventure, pointing out every strange landmark and making up stories about the people they passed. Vivian relaxed a little more with each mile, the tension in her shoulders gradually easing. By the time they reached Montana, it felt like they'd crossed into another world. The town was exactly what Marcus had described: small, quiet, surrounded by mountains and forests. Adrian rented a house on the edge of town, a 2-bedroom cabin with a view of the valley. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. They settled into a routine over the next few weeks. Adrian found work at a local construction company. Vivian started seeing a specialist in the nearest city, a doctor who thought he might be able to restore partial vision with surgery. Emma enrolled in the town's elementary school and made friends almost immediately. Life became something close to normal. Not perfect, not easy, but normal. One evening, about 6 weeks after they'd arrived, Adrian was sitting on the porch watching the sunset when Vivian came out and sat beside him. She'd just gotten back from another appointment with the specialist, and there was something different about her expression. "He thinks the surgery will work," she said. Adrian turned to look at her. "Yeah?" "Yeah, he can't promise full vision, but he thinks I'll be able to see shapes, maybe colors. It's more than I've had in 3 years. That's incredible." "It is," she paused. "But it's also terrifying." "Why?" "Because I've built my entire life around being blind. I've learned how to navigate, how to protect myself, how to survive. And now I have to learn how to do all of that again, with sight. It's like starting over." Adrian reached over and took her hand. "You've started over before. You can do it again." "What if I can't?" "Then we'll figure it out together, same as we've been doing." Vivian squeezed his hand. "You make it sound so simple." "It's not simple, but it's possible, and that's enough." They sat in silence for a while, watching the sun dip below the mountains. Inside, Adrian could hear Emma laughing at something on TV. It was a sound he'd been afraid he'd never hear again. "Adrian," Vivian said. "Yeah? Do you ever regret it, helping me? Getting tangled up in all of this?" Adrian thought about it. About the fear and the danger and the sleepless nights. About the moment he'd seen those men in his apartment. The moment he'd broken Vivian out of federal custody. The moment he'd stood beside her in front of those cameras. "No," he said. "I don't regret it. Not for a second." "Why not?" "Because I spent 4 years feeling like I was just going through the motions. Like I was surviving but not really living. And then you showed up, and everything changed. You reminded me what it feels like to care about something bigger than just making it through another day. So no, I don't regret it. I'd do it all over again." Vivian's eyes filled with tears. "I love you. I love you too." They kissed as the last light faded from the sky. Inside, Emma called out that dinner was ready. And for the first time in longer than Adrian could remember, everything felt right. The federal case against William Cross went to trial 8 months later. Adrian, Vivian, and Emma traveled back to the city for the proceedings, staying in a hotel under protective custody. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Vivian testified for 3 days, recounting everything her father had done with a clarity that left the courtroom silent. William Cross sat at the defense table, his expression blank, his lawyers whispering in his ear. He never looked at Vivian, not once. The jury deliberated for 2 days. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all counts. Cross was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. His assets were seized, his company dismantled, his legacy destroyed. Standing outside the courthouse afterwards, surrounded by reporters, Vivian gave one final statement. "My father spent his entire life building an empire on other people's suffering. He believed he was untouchable. He was wrong. Justice doesn't always come quickly, and it doesn't always come easily. But it comes. And today, it came for him." The reporters shouted questions, but Vivian didn't answer them. She just turned and walked away, Adrian and Emma on either side of her. They returned to Montana the next day. The surgery was scheduled for the following month. Vivian was nervous, but Adrian could see the hope in her eyes, the possibility that things might get better. The surgery took 6 hours. Adrian sat in the waiting room with Emma, both of them too anxious to do anything but stare at the clock. When the doctor finally emerged, he was smiling. The procedure went well. We won't know the full extent of the restoration for a few days, but I'm cautiously optimistic. Adrian exhaled for what felt like the first time in hours. Can we see her? She's still in recovery, but you can go in. Vivian was lying in the hospital bed, her eyes covered with bandages. She turned her head as they entered, a faint smile on her lips. Adrian? Yeah, I'm here. Emma too. Emma climbed onto the bed carefully, snuggling against Vivian's side. Does it hurt? A little, but I'll be okay. When do you get to see again? In a few days, when they take the bandages off. Will you be able to see me? Vivian's smile widened. I hope so, sweetheart. I really hope so. The days waiting for the bandages to come off were agonizing. Vivian tried to stay positive, but Adrian could see the fear beneath the surface. What if it didn't work? What if she'd gone through all of this for nothing? When the day finally came, they sat in the doctor's office, Emma holding Vivian's hand. The doctor carefully removed the bandages, unwrapping layer after layer until Vivian's eyes were exposed to light for the first time in 3 years. She blinked slowly, her eyes adjusting. At first, she just stared straight ahead, her expression unreadable. Then she turned her head toward Adrian. I can see you, she whispered. Adrian's throat tightened. Yeah? Yeah, you're blurry, but I can see you, your face, your eyes. She turned to Emma next. Oh, Emma, you're beautiful. Emma grinned, tears streaming down her face. You can really see me? I can really see you. They all cried then, holding each other in that sterile doctor's office like it was the most sacred place on earth. The vision wasn't perfect. It would never be perfect. But it was enough. Vivian could see shapes and colors, could make out faces and navigate without needing constant guidance. She described it as living in a watercolor painting, everything soft-edged and dreamlike. But it was hers, and that made it perfect. Life continued. Adrian kept working construction. Vivian started volunteering at a nonprofit that helped survivors of corporate abuse. Emma thrived in school, her laughter filling the house every afternoon. They were a family. Not the family Adrian had imagined when he'd married Sarah, not the family Vivian had grown up with in her father's cold mansion, but a family nonetheless, built from desperation and choice and the stubborn refusal to give up on each other. 1 year after William Cross's conviction, Adrian and Vivian got married in a small ceremony in their backyard. Marcus stood as best man. Rachel was the maid of honor. Emma was the flower girl, scattering petals with theatrical flair. It was simple, quiet, perfect. That night, after Emma had gone to bed and the guests had left, Adrian and Vivian sat on the porch under the stars. You ever think about that night? Vivian asked. The night you picked me up in the rain? All the time. Do you think you would have stopped if you'd known what was coming? Adrian thought about it, about the fear and the danger and the way his entire life had been turned upside down, about the moments he'd been sure they wouldn't survive. Yeah, he said, I would have stopped, because even knowing everything that came after, I'd still choose you, every time. Vivian leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. I used to think my father took everything from me, my sight, my freedom, my future. But he didn't. He just made me think he did. And then I met you, and I realized I still had a choice. I could keep running, keep hiding, keep being the person he wanted me to be. Or I could fight back. I chose to fight. And because of that, I got everything I thought I'd lost. You didn't need me for that. You had the strength all along. Maybe, but I needed you to help me see it. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the wind move through the trees. Inside, Emma was asleep, safe and loved. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new fears, new reasons to worry. But tonight, everything was still. Adrian thought about what Sarah had told him before she died. That fear is just your brain telling you something matters, that the things that scare you most are the things worth fighting for. She'd been right. Vivian had scared him. Loving her had terrified him, but she'd also reminded him what it meant to be alive. Not just surviving, but living. Choosing to care even when it hurt. choosing to fight even when the odds were impossible. That's what being human means, Adrian thought. It means being scared and doing it anyway. It means getting knocked down and choosing to stand back up. It means loving people even though you might lose them, because the love itself is worth the risk. William Cross had tried to turn his daughter into a weapon, but she'd turned herself into something far more powerful, a person who refused to be broken, who stood in front of cameras and told the truth even though it cost her everything, who loved a single father and his daughter even though it put them all in danger. That kind of courage doesn't come from being fearless. It comes from being afraid and choosing to act anyway. And that's a lesson Adrian would carry with him for the rest of his life. "Hey," Vivian said, lifting her head to look at him. "What are you thinking about?" Adrian smiled. "Just how lucky I am." "Lucky?" "Adrian, you got tangled up with a fugitive CEO, broke into a federal building, and had your entire life threatened by a billionaire. That's not lucky."
Maybe not, but I got you out of it. So yeah, I'm lucky. Vivian laughed, the sound bright and clear. You're impossible. Yeah, but you love me anyway. Yeah, I do. They kissed under the stars, two people who'd found each other in the rain and refused to let go. Two people who'd faced impossible odds and come out the other side scarred, but whole. Inside, Emma stirred in her sleep, dreaming of clouds and dragons and the family that had fought to keep her safe. Outside, the mountain stood silent and eternal, bearing witness to the quiet miracle of ordinary people doing extraordinary things simply because they chose to care. And somewhere in a federal prison, William Cross sat alone in his cell, stripped of his empire and his power, finally learning what it meant to be powerless. But that story was over. His chapter had ended. This was a new story now, a better one. Adrian had spent 4 years believing his story ended when Sarah died, that he was just marking time until Emma grew up and he could finally stop pretending to be okay. But he'd been wrong. His story hadn't ended. It had just been waiting for the right person to help him write the next chapter. Sometimes the people who save us are the ones we stop to help in the rain. Sometimes the families we build are stronger than the ones we're born into. And sometimes the bravest thing we can do is admit we can't carry everything alone. Adrian had learned all of that from a blind woman in white who knew his name before he told her. A woman who'd walked into his life carrying secrets and danger and the kind of courage that changes everything. He'd saved her from the storm that night, but in the end, she'd saved him too. And that made all the difference.